Have you ever heard a skull scream?
No.
Well, now you have.
Among primitive people of many races, the human skull was regarded with superstitious awe. They believed that the skull housed the soul. Headhunters preserved the skulls of their fallen enemies as trophies of war. Scandinavian warriors drank from skulls, hoping to acquire the martial valor of their foes. The ancient Celts decorated their shrines with skulls. Widows in the Trobriand Islands of Papua impaled their dead husbands' skulls on poles as a kind of keep-out sign, or sometimes used them as pots. Skulls have always had an important role in witchcraft and black magic. They figured prominently in an English trial in 1612, in which Anne Chattox, head of the Lancashire family of witches, was accused of digging up 3 skulls from a churchyard to use in some ritual or demonic recipe. She was hanged. But skulls have not always been just the passive instruments of the sorcerer's craft. At Wardley Hall in Lancashire, the skulls of a 16th century Catholic martyr is on view at the head of the staircase, and an old legend warns that should it be disturbed, it will emit blood-curdling screams. In the 17th century, a girl named Anne Griffiths, who lived at Burton Agnes Hall in Yorkshire, was attacked and savagely beaten by robbers. As she lay dying from her injuries, she expressed the curious wish that her head should be buried in the home she had loved so well. She was nevertheless buried in the village churchyard. After the funeral, terrifying groans and the sound of a mysterious crash and slamming doors were heard in the house. The dead girl's skull was exhumed and bricked up in a wall off the staircase. Since then, Burton Agnes Hall has been at peace. The most curious of all skull legends in Britain is that of the screaming skull of Bettiscombe Manor in Dorset, ancestral home of the Penny family. The story goes that during the 18th century, a Penny who had been living in the West Indies returned home with a slave. Shortly afterward, the slave died, after making his master vow that he would be buried in his homeland, the Caribbean island of Nevis. But the squire apparently broke his promise, and the man was buried in the local churchyard. Soon, passers-by were terrified by blood-curdling screams from the grave. The present owners of the manor, however, Mr. and Mrs. Michael Penny, believed that the slave's dying wish was fulfilled, and the legend was largely the invention of Judge J.S. Udall, a 19th century antiquarian. Mrs. Penny says, "We believe the skull was found in a Celtic shrine behind the manor and brought into the house as a good luck charm around 1690 to 1694. Judge Udall visited the island of Nevis in 1897, where he heard the tale of the slave who had gone to England. On his return, he assumed the skull belonged to the slave and read a paper about it to the local antiquarian society. In fact, the skull was examined by an expert, and it was said to be that of a girl and was 2,000 years old. Yet the legend remains that if it was ever removed from the house, the skull will scream, and the person who removes it will die within a year." And may we never know the rest of the story.